I have
Sorry, go ahead.
some of the preliminary audiobook um done, and we have a really great narrator. So
Oh,
I can send you a clip that highlights sort of direct mental health um strategies found in the book, or whatever, but you can decide if you want to include a little bit of that. So it's
sure.
not
That
the
sounds
finalized version, but it's
okay.
good enough to
That would be
to do
great.
that. Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And what I'm planning to do, just so you know, for a little background, is next week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and the theme this year is actually about movement, about like physically being active to help with mental health. So that's kind of like the national theme for next week. What I'm planning to do is do a like a display in our library of your book. So we'll have your book up with a little bit of information about you and just talking a little bit about Mental Health Awareness Week. And then we'll also have however this interview will turn out either as a video or in a written format on our social media pages.
Okay. Yeah, whatever you want to do, I'm
Yeah,
down for that.
great. That's great. So why don't you tell
Yeah.
me a little bit? Your book was just published in 2023. Is that correct?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about like your father's work here and maybe specifically at UWSP. I looked up some of his information, but it would be nice to hear coming from you.
Right. My dad taught at UWSP for 20 some years, I think 27 or something like that. In the CNR, the College of Natural Resources, he taught resource management, um, lake stewardship, forest stewardship, and he became a pretty well-known person at the university and conservation circles, and that's sort of the hallmark department at UWSP.
Okay.
Um, and he had a few administrative roles,
Okay.
but he also was a UW Extension liaison for UWSP, but the whole University of Wisconsin system. So he went all over the world to establish connections with other universities, with planning departments, with governments. So that was really cool because we often went with him.
Oh,
Um,
that's nice.
so he
That's
had
great.
his home base at UWSP, but his teaching and work sort of emanated out to the whole whole world in
That's
that way. Yeah.
that's great.
But
And
he he
what
he
years,
really he really loved the campus there and
yeah.
the students. So yeah.
Can you remind me what years he taught here?
Oh man.
Or approximately.
I'm just gonna give decades. So the 80s,
Okay.
80s, 90s, or in 2000s. And
Okay.
he retired in 2006, 2005, around there.
Okay.
So
Okay. Good to know.
yeah.
So, my second question for you, and again, you're feel free to change any of the questions or add anything, but when was your father diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Well, he struggled to find out what was going on with him for a long time, and so as the book kind of explores that trajectory, it's not focused in sort of clinical settings, but um, his diagnosis of finally he got the diagnosis of bipolar in the mid 70s, so he was already in his early 30s, but he had been struggling since his teens with it
Hmm.
without really knowing what was going on. So we're talking almost 20 years that uncertainty sort of um, clouded his life. And
Yeah.
um, but once he knew and then started getting the appropriate treatments, that changed things dramatically for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you. And I'm actually going to skip to question 4 because sort of I'm curious about how his mental health sort of intersected with his professional life. I mean, he was a very accomplished person, and I think many people know sort of bipolar has the extreme ups and extreme downs. So how was he able to manage
Um,
that?
I'm gonna I'm gonna disappoint you a little bit in saying that you should. It certainly did affect his career, especially his early career.
Okay.
But it's a little bit of a spoiler to uh, wrap that all up. So I'm going to say you should read the book to find out the details of that, because it's a very
Okay.
dramatic path. But
Okay.
I will say that in general, it he wasn't sure that he could have a career and that he could accomplish the things that he did. And um, at a certain point in his life, he that uncertainty led him to consider whether to continue living or not.
Yeah.
And um, ultimately, he did. Thankfully, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But um, yeah, I would say that's sort of the main turning point in the book. So I'd like people to read that story so I don't spoil it for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So we will put that in there
Um,
as the
but
teaser for
I
people to
can
read the
also
book.
say that, at UWSP he dealt with bipolar disorder, but it wasn't um, the menace that it was earlier in his life. So he
Okay,
had a pretty good handle on managing it during his tenure at Stevens Point.
that's good. So now I'm going to flip back to question number 3, which is at what point did you decide to write this book about your father?
He sort of decided for me because he was writing it. He was writing a sort of grandiose memoir of sorts, and he developed Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is a really nasty neurodegenerative disease that um, pretty rapidly takes away your faculties and your cognitive abilities. And so, as he was sort of laying dying there of that, he implored me and made me promise him that I would finish it for him. And so I did. It took a lot of years, but I morphed it into something more approachable to a general readership, because if I hadn't, it would be 4 times as long as it is now. So we really focused on the mental health aspect and his early life. And so he asked me to do that as he was dying to finish his book, and I made good on that promise.
That's wonderful. Did you have anybody help you with that part then? Like when you said that you sort of the book has shifted in its scope from what it was originally that your father wrote. Did you have like an editor or a proofreader or somebody else in your family
Yeah,
helping
yeah,
you with that?
yeah. I initially I hired uh what they call a book doctor, which is somebody
Oh,
that does exactly what you just said, and sort of condensing and editing and finding the main through lines of a story. And he was going to do a little bit of ghostwriting too, to sort of
okay.
fill in some of the gaps. Um, but then I discovered that it was going to be a much more compelling story if I added my own voice to it.
Okay,
And so we didn't do any ghostwriting with my book coach. His name is Michael Levin. Um, but I sort of filled in those gaps by lending my own voice and perspective, and that gave it a lot more context and perspective from multiple angles, and I think that makes the story a lot more uh, nuanced and compelling. So Michael helped me a lot. You know, he did probably close to 100 hours of helping me through what what to write about and what to really dig into. And so he was immensely helpful, but ultimately in the end, all the writing was myself and my dad's. So
great.
yeah,
It certainly has gotten favorable reviews. I mean, I've looked at the reviews of the book, and what was
yeah.
the, after you published it, what was sort of the, how did people feel about it? Like in your family or your friends or,
Can you say that again? You broke up a
sorry,
little there.
I was just curious. So the reviews of your book were very promising. I mean, you had good reviews on the book, and I was just wondering how, family and friends, after you published it, what did they think of your work?
Everybody was supportive. I think there's some people on my dad's side of the family because we have a genetic history of and predisposition to mental illness that they didn't discourage it or disdain that I did it, but they're a little quiet about it, you know.
Oh, okay.
But um, everybody's been great. We've been pushing it hard, you know, and it takes a lot of work to let people know about it and how it, you know, not only that it's a good story, but it offers something to them in reading it. And I think we've been successful in doing that. And um, yeah, it's. I mean, we wrote the book for a general audience for sort of the
Yeah,
mass market,
yeah,
um, and so yeah, there hasn't been any consternation as far as I know. You know, people uh, might say something different when I can't hear them, but from what I know, everybody has really supported the effort.
that's great. Have you done any book talks at all? Like at either libraries or bookstores?
I've done some book clubs, you know, where I join the clubs either in person or online. Haven't done any libraries, but I'm certainly open to doing that. You know, it's try to do something every day. So I'm really happy for this opportunity because uh, it's great that to me and I'm really thankful that people um, want to know about the story and think it's worth it to talk about. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Um, so a couple other things that I wanted to ask you is, in what ways, like, did your family sort of support your dad during the time? I mean, you said that he got better and learned how to manage it, bipolar as he got older. But I'm just kind of curious, how did your family support him? Was that hard for all of you growing up in a household with a father with bipolar? Um,
Again, I'm not going to give too detailed an answer because it's a little bit of a
In the book.
spoiler
Okay.
for the book, but um, I will say he was, as I said during the book focuses really on his early life and his teens, 20s, and 30s, and he was pretty much floundering without. Uh, I mean, he had support. He had, he was married and his wife supported him, but nobody really knew what was happening with him. And
Yeah.
um, later in his life, he had the baseline where he knew, as far as much as we can know, we don't know everything about bipolar or any mental illness really, but um, the sort of standard treatments really worked for him later in his life. And so we didn't actually see too much of the disease. He had little episodes now and then, which I describe a little bit in words with my father.
Okay.
But the dramatic um, events and his struggle with it really occurred in his early life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another question I have is, and again, this is probably alluded to in the book, but how do you think that your father's experiences impacted your understanding of mental health influence and your advocacy efforts?
It really showed me a totally different side of him that I didn't know about. My family, his direct family and his extended family didn't know about. It showed us how vulnerable he was and how precarious his existence was for decades of his life, when we thought he was sort of this Superman father, infallible leader figure. And that, I knew it before, but it really cemented for me how, even despite all outward appearances, it's really hard to know what's going on with somebody, especially somebody with severe mental illness. And um, it showed that it's you just have to give people some grace, and you have to um, really understand what they're dealing with before you make a full impression of them. Because my impression of my dad really changed after I read this, because I knew I knew he had this disease, but I never really fully understood the extent of how much it tormented him, and uh, how much angst he had in his life, and uh, how really precarious his life was for 20 years.
Yeah,
And so uh, it just shows you that until you really know somebody, you have to give them some grace to figure out what they've dealt with.
yeah. And you have a brother, right? So
Yep, one older
he's
brother.
also, yeah. And um, did he also help with the book at all? Was there any participation there or?
Um, Not really, besides just emotional and support and encouragement.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's primarily been my doing, because he has a large family and his career over there, and really he doesn't have a lot of free time. So
Okay.
yeah.
So my next question, and we can alter this a little bit, but again, one of the reasons that we wanted to interview you and highlight the book for our library is during Mental Health Awareness Week, which is May 13th, beginning of May 13th. So what are some things, it doesn't have to be three things, but what are some things that you want people to know maybe about mental health? And what would you say is the best support that someone can provide for someone struggling with mental health issues? In addition to reading your book, what are some
Um,
things that you'd like people to know about?
First, I would say that if you're having struggles with mental health, whether you have a diagnosis or not, that to understand that there's no shame in it and that everybody, no matter what we think we are or what we want the world to see, that we're all fallible and have weaknesses. Um, and so a lot of people hide in that shame, hide from doing things that will help them improve their mental well-being. And I think just to recognize that there isn't, you don't have to have that shame, and it's really a sign of strength to show that you can be resilient and ask for help. um, I think that's a primary thing that anybody can do to move forward. um, and along with that, I guess the second point would be that, like, for my father, your current state isn't your sentence for life, and your condition or how bad things are now, that can change drastically and dramatically. It has, for me, I deal with primarily OCD, pretty classic OCD symptoms. And um, if you look at when I've had episodes of OCD in the past and where I am now, it's like a black and white
Mm,
dichotomy. Um, so a lot of times when we're stuck in one of those dark periods, we think that it's going to last forever, and uh, that very rarely happens. So to just keep that perspective that um, our mental state can change, it can fluctuate, hopefully more and more towards the better, but not to focus on too much of seeing that as something that's going to perpetually plague you. Um, and a third thing, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, but I think we've done an amazing job, just as a society in raising awareness, and
mhm,
people are so much more open. Just as an example, sort of the classic book about bipolar is An Unquiet Mind by Kay Jamison, and it was so revolutionary in when she wrote it because it was the only it was the
right,
only book about bipolar, and now
right.
there's so many. So I think we've made so much progress on raising awareness, and I think now is the time to switch that into action, action into finding some semblance of cures or better treatments, because we've been mental health treatment has lagged general medical treatment for a long time, and I think it's time that it caught up. And there's a good reason for that. It's because our brains are inside of a bone case, and
It,
it's hard to study that. Um, but I think we can make much more of an effort into doing that, and to devoting funding to that, and to really pushing for innovative cures and treatments. So just to wrap that all up, I think, we can move. We still need awareness, but we need to move more into action phase.
yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So
And
I have another
what
question.
was the last part of that?
I think I was just asking, what is the best support someone can provide for someone struggling with mental health issues? So I think you answered that. Um,
Okay.
I have
Can I
another
just
question.
I was just going to say something about that because I started
Yeah,
that with a thought. I think that's a really hard question that many people have because they're sort of tentative around how to interact with a person with a,
yeah,
a severe or just mental illness. And I think the first step is just not to judge and
yeah,
don't diagnose, don't judge, just listen carefully. Um, and beyond that, try to engage with that person in an activity that helps them feel better.
yeah,
Something productive that helps them feel
yeah.
better. And uh, a lot of us want to play Dr. Google
I know.
in helping somebody, but it
Yeah,
really is. That's not really our role as support people or as support. We need to listen and to um, provide help if help is requested, but a lot of times it can be counterproductive to try to uh, prescribe anything to somebody who's struggling. We have to really leave that to people who have studied that their whole lives. So
yeah. That's a good point. Thank you.
yeah,
Two more things I just wanted to ask you. One was, do you have any other writing projects, kind of in the back of your mind that you're thinking about doing? I know you just
I
published
do.
this work. Yeah?
Yeah. My dad was a supremely prolific writer. He as the book sort of goes in, he did it as in his later life as a therapy for his manic side. So he had a lot of periods of racing thoughts and ideas, and he was writing was one way to to release that manic energy. And the book
Yeah.
goes into that, but um, so I'm currently working sort of a little bit on the back burner because Words with My Father is really still our main focus, but
Yeah.
I'm working on sort of collecting a themed collection of those short pieces and essays and poems that I think could appeal to a lot of people. Um,
Oh, that would be great.
and it's a lot. Yeah. uh,
That would be great. Um,
yeah.
so before I wrap up, I wanted to just ask you, was there anything else you wanted to add? Is there anything else that you feel like I didn't cover that you want people to know about?
I would just, if you're interested in the story, just our website is wordswithmyfather.com, just the title of the book.com. And you can find out pretty much anything you'd want to know there. I'm always open to talking with people. I probably um, write back and forth with at least 10 people every day about the book and how it relates to their lives. So don't be afraid to reach out and um, yeah, just check out the website and so
And
I
check out
guess
the book.
that's it. Yeah,
So
that's
we do have the book available in the library, and then certainly we'll put up information for people to purchase the book. And I think I saw you have a Kindle version of the book as well, correct?
yeah. We have it's available pretty much everywhere. So Kindle, Apple Books. We have the
Okay,
paperback, hardcover.
great.
Um, you can order it from all the usual places. We're like I said, we're working on a really polished top tier audiobook right now.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully that'll launch in the next, June or July.
Oh,
Um,
great. That'll be great. I know a lot
and
of people will appreciate the
that
audiobook and
that
will,
helps reach a lot of people like me who are audio first readers or listeners, I
yeah,
guess.
right,
Um,
right.
so
That's
you
great.
can find it if pretty much anywhere.
That's great. And we can also, for our library, purchase that audiobooks. We purchase audiobooks as well for people to check out.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Lucas, I appreciate your time today, and I hope it's not the last we heard from you. And I hope that the book will be a big success with people, more and more people finding out about it. And I hope that maybe one day you'll consider doing a book talk. That would be really great.
Well, thank you, thank you
All right, Lucas.
for the
I'm going to
opportunity,
end the
Narissa.
interview.
I've
So
enjoyed it a lot.
thanks again. And it was good to talk to you and meet you.
Yeah, same here.
Take care.
I'll uh I'll send you that um
Yes, I would appreciate that.
the the MP3. It'll probably have to be by Dropbox because the file's pretty big, but
Okay, that's fine.
um,
But that would be
and
great to have when you have that.
yep, I'll do that and you can check it out.
Great. All
All
right.
right.
Have a
Well,
good day.
thank you.
Lucas. Take
Thanks so
care.
much for your interest.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Bye.
Bye.